Okay, so today the topic is decimals and place value. So this is 6.1 in our textbook. We're going to first of all look at what a decimal is. So decimal is part of a whole number. So just like a fraction is part of a whole. Just like that, a decimal is part of a whole number. All the numbers to the right of the decimal point, so these ones here, all the numbers to the right of the decimal point are decimals. And all the numbers to the left of the decimal point, so it's a whole number. Okay, so of course you need to write this down. Okay, now it's very important to understand place value when we are working with decimals. Okay, so we can see that we have the decimal place here in the middle, and obviously all of the numbers to the left, all of these numbers here, are whole numbers, and all of these numbers to the right, these are the decimals. Okay, now it's also good to know that every time you move left away from the decimal place, the number gets 10 times bigger. And every time you move right away from the decimal place, the number gets 10 times smaller. So when we're moving left, we're going left this way, the number gets bigger, and when we're moving right, the number gets smaller. Okay, so the way we write decimals down here is we put the decimal place, obviously, and then for tenths, we're writing just 0.4, and then hundredths is the second place, so decimal point, and then 0.6 is how you write 600ths, and we're writing 8 thousandths here, so we need to write 0.008 as thousandths is the third place. Alright, so as I said, place value is extremely important when we are working with decimals, and you'll need to do some activities in your textbook to show me that you understand this. So let's start by looking at this. What is the value of the digit 8 in this number? Okay, so we know we can look at the 8 and it's the third place away from the decimal place. It's going right, so it's getting smaller. And we'll just have a look. We've got this first one is tenths, second one is hundredths, and the third one is thousandths. Alright, so the 8 in this number is 8 thousandths. Okay, we could write a fraction, we could also write it in words. Alright, now another very important thing you need to understand when we're looking at decimals is that the first place in the decimal is tenths, as opposed to whole numbers where the first place value is ones and then the second one is tens, which sounds a bit like tenths. So you really need to make a mental note that the first place value after to the right of the decimal place is tenths, then hundredths, then thousandths. It doesn't equal up with the whole numbers. It's a bit different from the whole numbers, so you really need to understand that. Alright, now it's your turn. I want you to pause the video and work out the value of the digit of the 5 in these numbers. Alright, so hopefully you pause the video and worked it out yourself. You didn't just wait for me to give you the answer. Okay, so the first one, the 5 is in the second place after the decimal point, so it is 5 hundredths. The second one here is in the first place, and remember the first place is tenths, so that's 5 tenths. Now this third one, well, you know, I'm trying to be a bit tricky, but you probably know the answer to this. This is just a whole number of 5, so it's just 5 ones. Okay, I'm sure you did really well with those. Now, when we are writing fractions as decimals, so I just sort of showed you a little bit about decimal as a fraction. Now this is writing fractions as decimals. We need to look at the denominator. So we're at the bottom number in the fraction, that indicates the place value. Okay, so 7 tenths is 7 over 10. 7 tenths. 5 hundredths, 5 over 100. So when we're talking about hundredths, the denominator is always 100. And we're looking at thousandths, so 2 thousandths is 2 over 1,000, so 2 thousandths. Alright, so how we write these as decimals now is we need to look at the denominator. So the denominator here in the first one is tenths. And we know that tenths is the first place. Now I always like to write 0 in the whole number, even if you don't have to, but I always think it's a good habit to get into. Alright, so when we're writing it as a decimal, 7 tenths is 0.7. And we're writing 5 hundredths, 0 point, and now hundredths is the second place. So we have to put a 0 in the tenths place because there are no tenths, it's just 5 hundredths. And then the third one is 2 thousandths. Thousandths is the third place, so we're putting, that's tenths, there's no tenths, no hundredths, there's 2 thousandths. So that's how we write thousandths, the 2 thousandths as a decimal. Now when we're writing decimals as fractions, we've looked at this a little bit throughout it, but when we are writing decimals and fractions, you look at the last digit in the decimal, and that shows you what the place value is. So in the first one, the last digit is a 5, but it's in the thousandths column. So we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Therefore, it's 345 thousandths is how we write the fraction. Alright, this next one is 0.23. So the last digit of this decimal is in the hundredths column. Therefore, this decimal is 23 hundredths. 23 over 100. We can also write mixed numbers as decimals. And when we are writing mixed numbers as decimals, you need to remember that the whole number is to the left of the decimal point and the fractions to the right. Okay, so we have a mixed number of 3 and 17 hundredths. So as a decimal, we've got a whole number, so remembering that the whole number is to the left, so we put the 3 and then the decimal place. 3 and then it's 17 over 100. So we know that hundreds is the second place, so we can just write 17 there. So wherever the last digit ends up, gives you the place value. So the 7 is in the hundredths column, so therefore we can write it that way. When we are writing something that might be just 5 over 100, so we can write 7 and 5 hundredths. This is a little bit different, might get confused with this one. So remember, we're writing the whole number. I'm sure you've got that organised, whole number to the left of the decimal place. Then it's 5 hundredths. Okay, so we need to make sure that the 5 is in the hundredths column. So it's 5 hundredths there. All right, you will also be asked to order the decimals, so you need to place them in order. And in this case, the example I'm going to do with you, I want you to arrange them in ascending order. So that means from smallest to largest. So ascending means going up, and descending, because it's got a D at the front, it means going down. Now, you need to remember that the decimal value is smaller the further away it gets. So we need to look at the first number in the decimal here. After, of course, we look at the whole number, because the whole number indicates, of course, how big the number is, and then we start going from the decimal place along to work it out. All right, so in this case, I can see that obviously we're going to do from smallest to largest. So the smallest ones are the 2's, and then I have to look at the next number. So this was just a 2, and then I've got a 2 here. So we've got 2.37 and 2.73. So I've looked at the 2, now we have to look at the tenths column. So we've got a 3 in the tenths column and a 7. So we're looking for the smallest one, and in this case the smallest one is the 3. So the first number is 2.37, and then we're going to have 2.73. Now we look at the next whole numbers, which is the 3's. 3.72 and 3.27, well obviously 2 is smaller, so it's 3.27 and then 3.72. And cross them out. Then we're left with the 7.23 and 7.32. So the 2 smaller than 3 in the tenths place, so it's 7.23, and then I run out of space now, 7.32. Okay, so that is in ascending order. Alright, so hopefully you've got all this under control, and good luck working on your textbook questions.